Let me tell you what the federal government recommends you keep at home in case of an emergency. 3 days, 72 hours. That's the official guidance from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the very organization whose entire purpose is to prepare America for disasters. Their website says, and I'm paraphrasing, keep a 3-day supply of food and water for each person in your household. 3 days. I want to sit with that number for a moment before we go any further. 3 days means that if something goes wrong on a Monday morning, you're supposed to be fine by Thursday. 3 days means that whatever the emergency is, hurricane, earthquake, major ice storm, supply chain collapse, power grid failure, pandemic, the assumption built into the government's guidance is that the situation will be resolved, or at least stabilized enough for normal supply chains to resume, within 72 hours. I'm not here to tell you FEMA is lying to you. I'm not here to tell you the government is hiding something or that there's some kind of agenda behind that number. FEMA does important work, and a lot of the people who work there are genuinely dedicated to public safety. What I am here to tell you is that 3 days is not enough, and I can prove it using FEMA's own disaster history. Stay with me, because by the end of this video I'm going to show you exactly why 3 months is the number that actually makes sense, what a 3-month supply actually looks like in practice, what it costs, and how you can build it even if you have a tight budget and a small home. This isn't about fear. This is about math and history, and making a calm, rational decision before you need to make an urgent, panicked one. Let's start with the history. Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in August of 2005. It was a Category 4 storm when it made landfall. The levees failed. Entire neighborhoods were underwater within hours. Now here's what FEMA's 3-day guideline assumes, that within 72 hours, the emergency response infrastructure would be functional enough that people would have access to food, water, and basic supplies. What actually happened? People were stranded on rooftops for days. The Superdome, which became a shelter of last resort, held tens of thousands of people in conditions that deteriorated rapidly over multiple days. It took more than a week before meaningful federal relief reached the majority of affected residents. Many neighborhoods in New Orleans remained without power, running water, or reliable food access for weeks, some for months. 3-day supply, 1 week minimum to get real relief. Do the math. Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico in September of 2017, a Category 4 storm that knocked out the entire island's electrical grid. Puerto Rico had about 3.4 million American citizens living there when Maria struck. Many parts of the island were without power for months. Without power, refrigeration fails. Without refrigeration, fresh food spoils. Without fresh food, you're dependent on shelf-stable supplies. And the supply chain disruptions meant that even those who had money couldn't always find food to buy because the store shelves were empty or the store itself was closed. Some communities in Puerto Rico didn't have reliable electricity restored for nearly a year after Maria. A year, not 3 days. The winter storm Uri hit Texas in February of 2021. Texas has its own independent power grid. This is relevant because it meant the state couldn't easily draw power from neighboring states the way most of the country can. When the temperature dropped to levels Texas's infrastructure wasn't built to handle, pipes froze and burst. The power went out for millions of people in the middle of winter. People were without heat, without electricity, without running water. Grocery stores ran out of food within hours of the storm hitting. People were melting snow on their stoves to get drinking water. People died. And this wasn't a remote, rural area. This was in major American cities: Houston, Dallas, Austin. Millions of people in some of the most developed, affluent cities in the country were without basic necessities for days, and, in some cases, weeks. 3 days. Texas told you 3 days would be fine. And then there is the event that most of us lived through together, the COVID-19 pandemic beginning in March of 2020. I'm not interested in the politics of the pandemic response. What I am interested in are the supply chain facts. Within days of widespread lockdowns beginning, grocery store shelves across the country were stripped bare. Flour disappeared. Canned goods disappeared. Toilet paper became something people were fighting over in parking lots. Yeast, a product that most people couldn't have found on a store shelf in an emergency, even if they wanted to, became impossible to find for months because everyone who had never baked bread in their life suddenly decided to start. The pandemic supply chain disruptions weren't 3 days. They lasted, in various categories of goods, for months. For some items, years. We're still seeing ripple effects from pandemic-era supply chain disruptions in 2024. I want to be fair here. FEMA's 3-day recommendation wasn't designed to cover worst-case scenarios. It was designed as a minimum baseline, a starting point to get people who have zero emergency preparedness to do something rather than nothing. And for a minor, localized emergency, a brief power outage, a small winter storm that closes roads for a day, 3 days is probably adequate. But here's my problem with that framing. We don't get to choose what kind of emergency we face. We don't get to say, I'll only have the kind of emergency that lasts 3 days. Emergencies don't come with advance notice about their severity or their duration. And the cost of being wrong is not a minor inconvenience. The cost of being wrong is what we saw in New Orleans in 2005 and in Puerto Rico in 2017 and in Texas in 2021. So why 3 months? Why not 1 month? Why not 6 months? Why not a year? 3 months is the sweet spot for several reasons. First, looking at historical disasters, 3 months covers the vast majority of supply chain disruptions and emergency recovery periods. There are exceptions, Puerto Rico after Maria being the most dramatic example. But 3 months gets you through virtually every scenario short of a civilization-ending event. And if you're planning for civilization-ending events, you have much bigger problems than your pantry. Second, 3 months is achievable on a normal budget. A full year's worth of food storage requires significant investment, significant space, and a level of commitment that most people simply aren't going to make. 3 months is ambitious, but realistic. It's something you can actually do without completely reorganizing your life. Third, 3 months changes your psychological relationship with food security. When you have 3 months of food at home, you stop feeling anxious when you watch the news. You stop panic buying the moment there's a hint of a supply chain issue. You can shop calmly, rationally, at sales, when you want to, rather than when you have to. The mental peace that comes from a well-stocked pantry is something I genuinely didn't expect when I started building mine, and it's been one of the most valuable aspects of this entire project. Now let's talk about what 3 months of food actually looks like, because I think a lot of people imagine it requires a warehouse or specialized freeze-dried military rations, or an enormous budget, and none of that is true. The fundamental building blocks of a 3-month pantry are not exotic. They're the same foods that families have been relying on for generations in every culture around the world. Grains, legumes, fats, salt, and preserved proteins. Everything else builds on that foundation. Let's start with calories, because that's the foundation of everything. An average adult needs somewhere between 1,500 and 2,200 calories per day, depending on their size, age, and activity level. Let's use 1,800 as a reasonable middle figure. Over 3 months, 90 days, that's 162,000 calories per person. That sounds like an enormous number, but it becomes manageable very quickly once you look at the caloric density of shelf-stable staples. White rice. This is the single most important item in a long-term food storage pantry, and I want to explain why I'm recommending white rice specifically rather than brown rice. Because the answer might surprise you. Brown rice is nutritionally superior. It has more fiber, more vitamins, more minerals. If I were telling you what to eat every day in your normal life, I would probably say brown rice. But for a storage pantry, brown rice has a critical flaw. The bran layer that makes it more nutritious also contains oils that go rancid. Properly stored brown rice lasts about 6 months. Properly stored white rice lasts 20 to 30 years. For a pantry that you're building now and hoping you'll never actually need, that shelf life difference is enormous. 50 pounds of white rice costs somewhere around $20 to $25 at most warehouse stores. Those 50 pounds contain roughly 80,000 calories. That's already nearly half of a single person's caloric needs for 3 months, from one item for about $25. Rolled oats. This is my second most recommended staple, and it earns that spot for several reasons. Oats cook quickly, 5 to 10 minutes with hot water, which is important when fuel might be limited. They're one of the most nutritionally complete grains you can buy, with meaningful amounts of protein, fiber, and complex carbohydrates. They're genuinely palatable, even in Spartan conditions. And they're cheap. 10 pounds of old-fashioned rolled oats costs somewhere between $6 and $9 and gives you around 17,000 calories. Stored in an airtight container, they'll last 2 to 4 years easily. Pasta. Dry pasta stored in a sealed container lasts 2 to 3 years and provides a sense of normalcy in a pantry that might otherwise feel very Spartan. 8 pounds of dry pasta, a mix of shapes is helpful for variety, costs around $8 to $10 and adds roughly 12,000 calories to your supply. Pasta also pairs well with almost every canned ingredient you'll stock, making it one of the most versatile items in the entire pantry. All-purpose white flour, 5 to 10 pounds for $3 to $5. Stored properly, it lasts 1 to 2 years and gives you the ability to make flatbreads, simple dumplings, and impromptu baked goods using whatever other ingredients you have on hand. This is about flexibility as much as calories. Now let's talk about protein, because this is where a lot of budget pantry builds fall short. Dried black beans and dried lentils are the backbone of protein storage for a budget-focused pantry. 5 pounds of dried black beans for around $5. 4 pounds of lentils for around $5. Together, they give you an enormous amount of plant-based protein at almost negligible cost. Black beans and rice together form a complete protein, meaning the combination gives you all the essential amino acids your body needs. This is not an accident. Cultures around the world figured this out independently over thousands of years because it works. Lentils have the added advantage of cooking quickly without soaking, which is valuable when you're conserving fuel and water. Peanut butter. I want you to understand how important this item is before you move past it. Peanut butter contains about 190 calories per 2 tablespoons, along with 8 grams of protein and 16 grams of healthy fat. It requires 0 preparation, 0 cooking, 0 water. It has a shelf life of about 1 year to 2 years, unopened. And in an extended emergency, it provides a psychological comfort that is genuinely difficult to quantify but impossible to dismiss. 6 large jars of peanut butter, 36 ounces each, the big ones from the warehouse club, will cost you around $24 to $30 and add a meaningful amount of both calories and protein to your supply. Canned tuna and canned chicken. This is where you get actual animal protein into your pantry at a reasonable cost. Buy canned tuna in water rather than oil. It has better caloric balance, and the water content helps with hydration. 36 cans of tuna, bought in bulk, will cost you around $36 and last 3 to 5 years. 16 cans of chicken, about $32. Together, they give you enough animal protein to include it in your meals, several times per week over 3 months. And the psychological impact of actual meat protein on morale in a difficult situation is significant. Canned sardines deserve their own mention here. I know the face you're making, but hear me out. Sardines are one of the most nutritionally complete foods on the planet. They're a source of complete protein, omega-3 fatty acids, calcium from the bones, vitamin D, and vitamin B12. They cost almost nothing, often less than $2 per can. And while sardines eaten straight out of the tin might not appeal to everyone, sardines mixed into pasta with canned tomatoes and garlic powder taste genuinely good. Once a week, sardines in a long-term pantry situation are a meaningful nutritional asset. Now we need to talk about vegetables and fruit, because grains and protein alone will leave you with serious nutritional deficiencies over 3 months. Canned tomatoes are the single most versatile item in this entire category. Buy crushed tomatoes and diced tomatoes, 20 to 24 cans for around $12 to $15. Canned tomatoes form the base of soups, stews, pasta sauces, shakshuka, and curry. They provide vitamin C and lycopene and acid, which is crucial for flavor balance in dishes made from shelf-stable ingredients. This might be the single highest value item in the entire pantry in terms of how much it improves the quality of your meals. Beyond tomatoes, you want a mix of canned corn, canned peas, canned carrots, canned spinach, and canned green beans. Budget around $15 for 18 to 24 cans of mixed vegetables. These aren't exciting, but they're doing important nutritional work, particularly the spinach, which provides iron and fat-soluble vitamins, and the peas, which have more protein than most vegetables. Canned fruit, peaches, mandarin oranges, pineapple, packed in juice rather than syrup. Budget around $10 to $12 for 12 to 14 cans. This might seem like a luxury, but it isn't. In an extended emergency situation, having something sweet and bright tasting is more important for morale than most people realize. A bowl of canned peaches at the end of a difficult day is a small thing that keeps people functional. Fats and oils deserve more attention than they typically get in prepping discussions. Fat is the most calorie-dense macronutrient, 9 calories per gram versus 4 for protein or carbohydrates. Fat is also how your body absorbs fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. And fat makes food taste better, which in a prolonged pantry situation is not a minor consideration. Buy a large container of vegetable oil, a jar of coconut oil, and a bottle of olive oil. Budget around $20 to $25 total. Together, these will last 2+ years stored properly and will be used in virtually every meal you cook. Salt and seasoning. I'm going to spend some time here because this is the area that separates a functional 3-month pantry from a miserable one. The phenomenon of appetite fatigue, where people stop eating because the monotony of their food becomes psychologically unbearable, is a well-documented problem in emergency food situations. The solution is not more expensive food. The solution is seasoning. Buy iodized salt in a large canister. Iodine deficiency is a real health concern, and iodized salt is your primary protection against it in a pantry-focused diet. Buy black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, cumin, paprika, chili flakes, bay leaves, and dried oregano. Each of these costs $2 to $3. Together, they allow you to transform the same basic ingredients into completely different flavors across dozens of meals. Black beans with cumin and chili flakes taste like restaurant food. Black beans with garlic powder and bay leaves taste like something your grandmother made. Black beans with soy sauce and a little sesame oil taste like something from a completely different cuisine. Same beans, different experience. Soy sauce and apple cider vinegar. Two items that many first-time pantry builders skip and almost immediately regret skipping. Soy sauce provides umami, that deep, savory, satisfying quality that makes food feel like a complete meal rather than survival rations. Vinegar provides brightness and acid, which is critical for flavor balance in rich, starchy dishes. 2 bottles of soy sauce and 1 bottle of apple cider vinegar will cost you around $7 to $9 and will genuinely transform your cooking in a way that's hard to appreciate until you try it. Bouillon cubes, both chicken and vegetable, are worth the $3 to $4 they cost. A bouillon cube dissolved in hot water becomes broth, and broth transforms plain rice into congee, plain lentils into soup, and plain pasta into something that actually tastes like it was made with care. Honey. 1 large jar of honey, around 22 ounces, for $6 to $8. Honey is the only food that has literally never expired. Archaeologists have found 3,000-year-old honey in Egyptian tombs that was still edible. It sweetens oatmeal, teas, and baked goods, and has mild antimicrobial properties that make it useful for minor wound care as well. Buy the real thing, not the blended syrups. A 3-month supply of daily multivitamins. This is non-negotiable, and it's the single most important item that people skip. No matter how well you plan a food storage pantry, there will be nutritional gaps. Fresh vegetables and fruits, which provide a wide range of vitamins that don't survive the canning process perfectly, will not be a regular part of your diet. A daily multivitamin is the insurance policy that covers those gaps. A 90-count bottle costs around $10 to $12. That's 3 months of nutritional insurance for $12. Instant coffee, if you drink it. I'm including this not because caffeine is a nutritional necessity, but because in a difficult, extended emergency, the psychological value of a morning ritual, hot coffee, something familiar, something that signals that life has not completely unraveled, is worth more than its caloric value. 1 large canister of instant coffee for about $8 to $12. Now let's talk about what this actually costs for 1 person for 3 months. 50 pounds of white rice, $25. 10 pounds of rolled oats, $8. 8 pounds of pasta, $9. 5 pounds of all-purpose flour, $3. 5 pounds of dried black beans, $6. 4 pounds of dried lentils, $5. 6 large jars of peanut butter, $28. 36 cans of tuna, $36. 16 cans of chicken, $32. 12 cans of sardines, $20. 24 cans of tomatoes, $15. 22 cans of mixed vegetables, $15. 14 cans of fruit in juice, $11. Oils and fats, $23. Salt and full seasoning package, $22. Soy sauce and apple cider vinegar, $8. Bouillon cubes, $4. Honey, $7. Sugar, 2 pounds, $2. Multivitamins, 90 count, $11. Instant coffee, $10. Total, approximately $380 for one person for 3 months. That's about $4.20 per day. For reference, the average American spends somewhere between $10 and $15 per day on food, including restaurants and convenience food. A 3-month emergency pantry built from scratch costs less per day than a single fast food meal. Now, I want to address the storage question honestly, because I know it's the objection that's already forming in your mind. Where does all of this go? The honest answer is less space than you think. The grains, 50 pounds of rice, 10 pounds of oats, 8 pounds of pasta, 5 pounds of flour, can all fit in 4 to 6 large food-safe storage buckets, the kind you can find at any hardware store or online for around $5 to $8 each. Those buckets fit in a closet, under a bed, or in a corner of a spare room. The canned goods, roughly 80 to 90 cans, stack on a shelf or in a storage bin. If you have a bookshelf, you have room for a 3-month pantry's worth of canned goods. The oils, seasonings, peanut butter, and dry goods fill 1 or 2 boxes that slide under a table. The rule for storage is simple: cool, dark, and dry. Heat is the primary enemy of shelf life. Direct sunlight degrades packaged goods over time. Moisture causes rust on cans and allows mold to grow in grains and legumes. A closet, a basement corner, a section of a spare bedroom, anywhere that stays relatively cool and doesn't see direct sunlight is adequate. Airtight containers for your loose grains and legumes will extend their shelf life significantly. If you're serious about this, you can buy Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers from Amazon. The bags cost around $1 each, the oxygen absorbers even less, and sealed this way, white rice can last 25 to 30 years. But this level of preservation isn't required for a practical 3-month supply. Basic airtight containers are sufficient. I also want to address the objection that I know is coming from a slightly different direction, which is the question of whether any of this food will actually taste good. Because I think a lot of people imagine that a pantry built from canned goods and dried grains is going to taste like cardboard and desperation. Let me walk you through a real day of eating from this pantry. Breakfast is a bowl of rolled oats, cooked in water with a drizzle of honey and a pinch of salt. The oats take about 7 minutes. The honey makes them taste like something you'd actually choose to eat. Coffee on the side. Lunch is a bowl of lentil soup. Lentils, water, bouillon cube, crushed tomatoes, garlic powder, cumin, a bay leaf. This takes about 30 minutes from dried lentil to finished soup. It is genuinely good. It is the kind of soup that people make by choice in their normal lives, not just in emergencies. Afternoon snack is a tablespoon of peanut butter eaten with whatever crackers you have, or just off the spoon. Dinner is pasta with canned chicken, crushed tomatoes, garlic powder, chili flakes, a splash of soy sauce, and a drizzle of olive oil. This takes about 20 minutes. It tastes like a quick weeknight pasta, not like emergency rations. Dessert is half a can of peaches and juice. That entire day is approximately 150 calories. It includes carbohydrates, protein, healthy fats, vitamins from the vegetables and fruit, and a meaningful variety of flavors and textures. It does not taste like suffering. Here's something I want to say directly before we wrap up, because I think it's the most important thing in this entire video. FEMA's 3-day recommendation is not wrong in the sense of being dishonest or malicious. It's wrong in the sense of being calibrated to the minimum rather than the adequate. It's the governmental equivalent of the recommended daily allowance for vitamin C, the amount you need to prevent scurvy, not the amount that actually supports optimal health. 3 days keeps you from becoming a crisis in the first 72 hours of an emergency. 3 months actually keeps you safe through the full duration of almost any real-world disaster scenario the historical record shows us. These are very different things. There's also something I want you to think about that goes beyond the emergency scenario itself. A well-stocked pantry changes how you interact with the food system in your normal life. When you have 3 months of food at home, you can shop sales. You can buy in bulk when prices are low. You can stop going to the grocery store because you're out of something and start going because you want something specific, or because you're restocking something you've used. The psychological shift from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking in your relationship with food is genuinely significant, and it happens almost automatically once the pantry is in place. You're also not relying on just-in-time supply chains. The modern grocery supply chain is extraordinarily efficient under normal conditions, but it operates on very thin margins of buffer. Most grocery stores have roughly 3 days of supply on hand at any given time, which is why shelves strip bare so quickly at the first sign of any disruption. You are, right now, one bad week away from the same supply chain stress that cleared shelves in March of 2020. A 3-month pantry means you step entirely outside of that vulnerability. You also stop making decisions from panic. The people who paid $50 for a single can of disinfecting wipes in April of 2020 didn't do that because they were foolish. They did that because they were scared, and they were shopping from a position of scarcity. A 3-month pantry means you watch the news without your heart rate going up. It means when a hurricane is predicted to make landfall somewhere in your region, you don't join the line at Walmart that wraps around the building. You're already ready. FEMA says 3 days. I say 3 months. The difference between those two numbers is the difference between hoping the emergency is brief and actually being prepared for the emergency to be as long as emergencies historically are. The history says it's not 3 days. The history says it's weeks, sometimes months. The history says 3 months covers virtually everything. And 3 months, built on the framework I've shown you today, costs less than $500 and fits in a closet. Everything I've covered in this video, every item, every quantity, approximate prices, and where to find the best deals, will be linked in the description below. If you're starting from zero, start with the grains. They're the cheapest, they're the highest calorie, and they anchor everything else. If this video changed how you think about your own food security, subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of practical, calm, evidence-based content I make every single week. Not fear, not doomsday, just real information about how to take care of yourself and the people you love before you need to. And if you're already building your pantry, drop where you are in the process in the comments. 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. I read every one, and I'd genuinely love to know where you're starting from. Stay ready.